All right, let's jump right into this explainer and decode the fascinating and honestly highly unusual economics behind India's largest dedicated pediatric hospital chain, Rainbow Children's Medicare. When you look at the broader healthcare landscape, finding a business model that completely throws out the standard playbook is incredibly rare. But, as we're going to see, Rainbow has managed to do exactly that.
And it starts right here. This massive healthcare franchise currently operates with absolutely zero core debt. Zero. Nada. Think about that for a second. Hospitals are notoriously capital-intensive beasts, right? They usually require absolute mountains of leverage just to scale. Yet, here's Rainbow, sitting super comfortably on a massive pile of cash.
Which actually creates this fascinating paradox. In FY26 alone, they added a record 500 beds, and they did it using only their internal cash reserves. They're literally growing at breakneck speed without owing a single dime to the banks. So, you're probably wondering, how on earth is that even possible? Well, that's exactly what we're going to unpack today.
Here's our roadmap for the breakdown. We'll start with their unique healthcare model. Then, look at their 24/7 doctor advantage, dive into the financial health and metrics, map out their expanding footprint, explore new avenues for growth, and finally, wrap up with valuation and the key risks.
All right, part one, a unique healthcare model. Let's look at this pure play approach.
So instead of trying to be everything to everyone, like your typical generalist hospital, Rainbow focuses entirely on doing just one thing, but doing it perfectly. Think about it. A multi-specialty hospital constantly has to divide its capital and attention across dozens of competing departments. Cardiology wants a new machine, oncology needs space, orthopedics needs funding. Rainbow, on the other hand, dedicates 100% of its clinical, operational, and real estate capital exclusively to maternal and child health.
And the way they build this out is through a hub-and-spoke model. This architectural choice is absolutely crucial. Basically, they centralize their most complex, expensive medical equipment at a massive core tertiary hospital. That's the hub. Then that hub is fed a steady stream of patient referrals by smaller, much cheaper neighborhood clinics, the spokes. It allows them to capture a massive citywide patient base without having to build incredibly expensive superstructures on every single corner.
Why does this matter to us? Because this specific architecture directly translates to some of the highest return ratios in the listed hospital space. Since their capital expenditure per bed is dramatically lower, they get a much faster payback on all those newly added beds. It's just a highly efficient use of capital across these urban markets. And actually, that efficiency is exactly what drives their best-in-class FY26 return on capital employed of roughly 19.7%.
Moving on to part two, the 24/7 doctor advantage. This is how they're building an unbeatable clinical moat.
So, unlike their competitors who mostly rely on ad hoc, on-call visiting doctors, Rainbow does something highly unusual. They keep over 850 senior specialists on full-time retainer. We are talking about a literal army of top-tier medical experts who are dedicated exclusively to the Rainbow network. And this retainer model fundamentally shifts how they handle midnight emergencies. The data shows that 50% of acute pediatric admissions happen totally unexpectedly at night. Because of this retainer setup, senior consultants, not just junior staff waiting by a phone, are physically present 24/7 to receive these kids. That immediate, middle-of-the-night access to top-tier care drives vastly superior clinical outcomes, and as you can imagine, it builds incredibly deep, undeniable trust with anxious parents.
Let's jump to part three, financial health and metrics. Time to look at the hard numbers behind all this growth.
That deep parental trust we just talked about, it shows up crystal clear in the financials. Rainbow maintained a really steady 12.4% year-over-year revenue growth, bringing it up to 1,703 crore in FY26. And the crazy part is, they did this even while absorbing the drag of commissioning 500 new beds. Growing revenue while simultaneously expanding capacity by such a massive margin is a huge testament to the sheer volume of patients flowing through their doors.
Plus, this growth is supported by some serious realization stability. Their payer mix is basically split perfectly down the middle, 48% out-of-pocket cash and 52% insurance. This means they're incredibly resilient. They aren't overly dependent on slow-paying government schemes, and they aren't tied down by highly concentrated insurance providers either. So by combining incredibly fast patient turnarounds with high willingness to pay premiums, they generate just a massive amount of free cash flow. Check this out. Patients stay on average for just 2.7 days. That high throughput helped drive their FY26 EBITDA to 544 crore with a massive margin of nearly 32%. Add in a projected average revenue per occupied bed approaching 60,000 rupees for their new hospitals, and suddenly it makes total sense why their balance sheet is sitting on about 700 crore in cash reserves.
All right, part 4, expanding the footprint. Let's see how they're deploying that self-funded pipeline.
If we map out their trajectory, we see a geographic footprint that's expanding well beyond their traditional South Indian stronghold over the next few years. In FY26, they successfully entered the Northeast and Tier 2 markets via M&A in Guwahati and Warangal. Looking at FY27, they're heavily densifying their presence in Bangalore to become the largest pediatric provider there. And looking further ahead to FY28, they're targeting North India, launching a massive 400-bed hub-and-spoke operation right in Gurugram.
But honestly, the biggest takeaway here is how they are financing all this. They are executing a 1,000 crore 3-year investment program entirely through internal accruals. No diluting equity, zero new debt. It is an absolute masterclass in financial health.
Moving on to Part 5, New Avenues for Growth. Let's look at how they're diversifying their revenue stream.
You know, historically, pediatric hospitals rely a lot on seasonal illnesses, but management is aggressively fixing that. By adding high-margin, annuity-like services, they are building a business that generates solid revenue year-round. For instance, their Rainbow fertility segment, focusing on IVF, is targeting an aggressive 25% compound annual growth rate. Then you've got Avon, their adult vaccination outreach, plus weight management and obesity clinics. These aren't just random side quests. They are highly strategic moves designed to bring the entire family into the ecosystem, boosting the lifetime value of every patient they see. And finally, Part 6, Valuation and Key Risks. It's time for a reality check.
So is this premium valuation of 49 to 59 times trailing PE actually justified? This is the multi-million-dollar question every investor is asking right now, especially after the stock's recent 24% pullback from its 52-week highs. At those multiples, perfection is pretty much priced in, which leaves very, very little room for any execution missteps.
But let's add some context. While a 49 to 59 times multiple seems incredibly steep in a vacuum, a comparative look reveals they actually screen cheaper, or at least in line, with massive multi-specialty chains. And keep in mind, Rainbow has superior capital efficiency. I mean, when you look at Apollo trading at 61 to 69 times, or Fortis at 70 times, Rainbow's valuation starts to look a bit different, especially when you factor in its status as a debt-free compounder.
However, we absolutely cannot ignore the risks. First, there's a very real occupancy drag created by rapidly adding those 500 beds. As those new beds mature, they naturally pull down blended occupancy, which actually hit 45.3% in Q4. Then there's the deep reliance on their founder's distinct clinical vision, Dr. Kancharla, alongside a newly appointed CEO. Add in the execution risks of replicating their South Indian success in entirely new regions like Delhi NCR, plus regulatory headaches like an ongoing GST dispute, and, well, it's not all smooth sailing.
As we wrap up this explainer, models like Rainbow really force us to step back and ask a much broader question. As generalist hospitals continue to stretch themselves thinner and thinner across every possible medical discipline, is a singular, hyper-specialized focus the undeniable future of the entire healthcare industry? Something to think about. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive.